Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of How I Built It. In this episode, I chat with Blair Williams, a WordPress veteran with lots of great plugins. We'll talk specifically about MemberPress and what it's like creating that plugin, the decision making that went into their pricing, wp-cron, and lots more. We'll get into that next, but first, a word from our sponsors. This season of How I Built It is brought to you by two fantastic sponsors. The first is Liquid Web. If you're running a membership site, an online course, or even a real estate site on WordPress, you've likely already discovered many hosts that have optimized their platforms for a logged out experience, where they cache everything. Sites on their hardware are great for your sales and landing pages, but struggle when your users start logging in. At that point, your site is as slow as if you were on $3 hosting. Liquid Web built their managed WordPress platform optimized for sites that want speed and performance, regardless of whether a customer is logged in or logged out. Trust me on this, I've tried it out and it's fast. Seriously fast. Now, with their single site plan, Liquid Web is a no-brainer for anyone whose site is actually part of their business and not just a site promoting their business. Check out the rest of the features on their platform by visiting them at buildpodcast.net/liquidweb. That's buildpodcast.net/liquidweb. It's also brought to you by Jilt. Jilt is the easiest way to recover abandoned shopping carts on WooCommerce, Easy Digital Downloads, and Shopify. Your e-commerce clients could be leaving literally thousands of dollars on the table, and here's why. 70% of all shopping carts are abandoned prior to checkout. Yes, you heard that right. 70% of shoppers never make it to checkout. And that's why you need to introduce your clients to Jilt. Jilt uses proven recovery tactics to rescue that lost revenue. It's an easy win that lets you boost your client's revenue by as much as 15%, and it only takes 15 minutes of your time to set up. Jilt fully integrates with WooCommerce, EDD, and Shopify, and you can completely customize the recovery emails that Jilt sends to match your client's branding using its powerful drag-and-drop editor, or by digging into the HTML and CSS. Even better, Jilt's fair pricing means your clients pay only for the customers they actually engage, and you get to earn a cut of that through Jilt's partner program. Whether you have clients that process 1 sale per month or 10,000 sales per month, be the hero and help them supercharge their revenue with Jilt. Check them out at buildpodcast.net/Jilt. That's buildpodcast.net/JILT. And now, on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of How I Built It, the podcast that asks, how did you build that? Today, my guest is Blair Williams of MemberPress. Blair, how are you today?
Doing well. Doing great.
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining me. We met a couple of years ago and then recently saw each other again at Cabo Press. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Rad. Well, why don't we jump right into it? Why don't you tell the folks who you are and what you do?
So I am Blair Williams, like Joe said, and I am the founder of MemberPress. And so MemberPress is a membership plugin for WordPress. So when you install it, it allows you to lock down posts and pages and content and put them basically behind a paywall. So people have to pay in order to get them. So it's great for, online courses and also for just all kinds of protected files. Associations use them. There's a wide range of uses for a membership site. So that's what we do 24/7.
Nice. Very nice. Now, I know that you are quite the developer. Steph Wells mentioned you on her episode back in season 3, I believe it was. Cool. You gave her a little push, right, to get into the development world. Is that?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Steph's actually my wife's, well, I think it's technically second cousin,
Gotcha.
but they're a little closer than that. And yeah, so I worked with Steph back in the day, and kind of got her. I was like, you probably got to think about programming. you know?
Yeah.
And so now they are rocking and rolling with formidable forms. So it's not that, I mean, she's just done a ton of work. I just planted the seed. My heck, she's
Nice.
amazing. And
Yeah.
Steve, they're both amazing. So
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of my favorite conversations because, my wife is a nurse. And so Steph kind of made the
Yep.
move from my wife's profession to my profession. So I really enjoyed talking to her about that.
yeah.
Cool. But so you do MemberPress. Now, where does MemberPress fall in the timeline of, I know there's like a bunch of membership plugins out there, right?
Right. So we launched MemberPress in 2013. So there were a handful of other ones. Well, I mean, there were still quite a few back then as well. I mean, part of the reason that we started, or that I started down the road of writing MemberPress, was that I had used, well, actually previously to even WordPress, I had written membership sites just using custom code like Ruby on Rails. That was kind of my forte
Nice.
back then. And I wrote it for a couple of different clients. And then I started, I don't know where I heard about it. I think it was because, so in 2009, I started getting into WordPress, like more on the marketing side. And I released Pretty Links, which is it's an affiliate link management plugin, and link shrinker. And so it's just on the WordPress directory. But anyway, so I just released that. And so I was kind of getting into WordPress, and I found that there were WordPress plugins that kind of did exactly what I had already built for some of my clients, So I started investigating it, and of course I had a couple of other clients that wanted to build membership sites as well. So I just started using a couple of them. There were a couple of plugins out there. I think Wishlist was a big one back then. There was also a Member, which was not a plugin, but it integrated with WordPress. And I think that they're both still going, and they're still, good solutions for sure. The thing that I had an issue with was I wanted deep WordPress integration. I wanted unencrypted code, and I wanted just a little bit more of a flexible way to protect stuff and to protect things a little bit more in a more solid fashion. And so I just got a wild hair and decided to write MemberPress. And initially I wrote it to sell Affiliate Royale. So I had actually written another program or plugin that's an affiliate. So it helps you to run an affiliate program on your website. So I released Pretty Links and then Affiliate Royale. But in the kind of interim there, I had written kind of the first iteration of MemberPress just to facilitate, selling the plugin. And so that's kind of where it started. And then I decided, hey, there's probably a market for this. And I think that it was just kind of out of getting to know the WordPress, environment, and, seeing what solutions were out there. And so I guess, it's kind of a developer founder, kind of thing. I didn't really do a ton of research, market research, other than that I knew that I needed it, and I thought other people might need it too, kind of a thing. And so I started getting it ready to sell. And 2013, we, launched it. So.
Nice. Very nice. So yeah. So you didn't do research in, say, the traditional sense, right? It was very scratch your own itch kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you had used other ones. You had some clients.
Absolutely, yeah.
Membership plugins could be just like these huge, like, you have the main thing, and then you have like a million edge cases. How did you kind of decide what to put into that first build? Was it just like the stuff that you needed, or did you know that you'd eventually release it? Okay.
yeah. Basically, it was the stuff that I thought that I would need. And I don't think I realized even up front that there were going to be so many edge cases. But we still get, requests for all kinds of different, things that people need to do in their business. And so that's a good thing for us. It can be difficult to kind of, decide what you're going to put into the plugin, if you're going to add features or if you're going to not add them, or if you do add them, how do you keep, kind of the paradigm of simplicity still, in there somehow. And that's a challenge, and, I'm sure that we're not perfect at everything, but we really try hard to keep that as a guiding principle to make things kind of clean. Because initially when I started writing it, my needs were very simple. And I think that the membership systems that I had written for other clients were fairly simple. And then they started bolting on kind of custom things. So it wasn't like you're doing it for a client. So you just built, you have to figure out ways to build it in.
Right.
But they kind of became their own customized kind of deal. But I think what we have today with MemberPress could probably, fit any of those needs from back then and way more, at this point. So.
Nice. Yeah. And so, I see you kind of have a pretty interesting pricing structure, right? So you have like the basic plus pro, and that includes a different number of sites. But the thing I want to call out here is that like the basic includes PayPal and Stripe support, and then the plus includes authorized.net, right? And so authorized.net holds this, let's say, we'll say special, but a terrible place in my heart. Because before I started using WordPress for everything and e-commerce stuff, integrating authorized was such a pain in the neck.
Yeah.
Is it still? Has it gotten better?
The interface is very similar. I mean, I think we've pretty much got it dialed in to, at this point, but it's definitely, and I think that they have made some, changes, over time, but it's definitely nothing like working with Stripe. I mean, Stripe is probably, is our favorite, of course. I mean, in terms of working with, for the API and all that. But yeah, authorized, we've had, and it's kind of in the plus because it's, as people get more and more volume, authorized turns into it can be a better solution for people with high volume, especially because you can, it's a true kind of gateway interface, right? So people can change out their merchant account or whatever and can sometimes get better rates on those things. So there's still a very viable and still a well-used option. Of course, Stripe is a little easier to work with.
Totally, yeah. So. I mean, Stripe, I made just like a HTML and CSS site recently.
Oh, cool.
Just for fun, like make sure I don't lose those skills, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And integrating Stripe was pretty easy. Like even sending like the custom information that I wanted to send to the API wasn't bad at all. So I guess the reason I started down this path was, how did you decide? Because pricing is really hard for everybody, right? So like, how did you decide like where to include these things, and also like how did you decide? Okay, well, we're definitely going to support authorized.net, or like how many of those feature requests do you get that you say no to, or things like that?
Yeah, well, in our case, because we're a WordPress plugin, and I know, I'm sure some of our competitors have they support additional payment options, but one of the things that we do is we offload the recurring part of subscriptions to the gateway. So with Authorized, we use their ARB, so their automated recurring billing. And then for PayPal, we use recurring profiles. And then for Stripe, we use, their subscriptions. And so the benefit that we found to that was that, and I guess this is probably not a good thing for us per se, but it's a good thing for the customer, is that if they decide, hey, I don't like MemberPress anymore or whatever, those subscriptions are portable. They can take those. And the other thing is that WordPress historically has not had a good track record with, so I'm not going to hate totally on wp-cron, but that's basically the only thing that you can guarantee will be present in a WordPress install. Mm-hmm. In Unix or like in custom projects we've done in the past, you use a thing called cron, right? Which is pretty reliable. And I think that's how a lot of these, I'm sure Stripe and Authorize and all of them are using cron on the back end in order to do these recurring payments. But for us, we don't have that luxury. And so we've tried to use wp-cron, which is kind of it's a simulation of cron that's not totally like, so we weren't really comfortable using that as kind of a way to like fire off payments since those are kind of important for people. And so we rely on the gateways for that. So long story short here, so there are certain gateways that we can't really support if we want to continue doing it that way, right? Because some gateways do not have recurring profiles or that sort of thing. But we do get requests from time to time for other gateways, and we definitely evaluate, those things. And we have a few kind of in the works. And so, that's kind of how we kind of evaluate it, is basically it's kind of based on the feature set and basically how easy it is for our customers to use and to access. So
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. It sounds like for subscriptions, at least you have or recurring payments, you have a principle that you follow, and then your evaluation is based on that principle. I love that. Now, quick clarification for wp-cron. And I think I know how this works, but I'm going to get expert clarification here.
Yeah.
Does wp-cron only fire, like you schedule something and then it fires as long as someone visits the site? Is that right? Is that
It's based on so what happens is that it basically uses JavaScript to fire off a non-blocking request, so in theory the person visiting the page won't see, they won't notice any lag or anything, but the JavaScript will actually call another thing and it's non-blocking, right? And what we've done, there are ways you can actually tie it to real cron, right? And that's what we do in our development environment, because we still use it for reminders and for other kind of maintenance tasks on MemberPress. But yeah, so it's just not, you're not guaranteed a specific time that will fire off, and there's some other kind of limitations of it. But it works fine for a lot of the things that we do with it. It's just that payments are not one of those things. Yeah.
If you want payment to, recur at midnight on the date, somebody needs to hit that site at midnight on the date, right? Yeah. So for those listening who aren't necessarily like super developer-y, you will notice that if you schedule a WordPress post and then no one visits your site within the window that you were supposed to have that post published, right?
Yep.
So like
scheduled posts are definitely that way. Yeah.
So if you're wondering like, hey, I scheduled my post for like 3:03 and it's now 3:05 and my post hasn't published, it's because nobody has visited your site. Hey everybody, I want to tell you about a sponsor I'm so excited to have on the show this week, and that's Beaver Builder. Beaver Builder is a drag and drop page builder and a platform you can trust with your business. Free up your time and join over 500,000 websites built with Beaver Builder. I have been using Beaver Builder for a couple of years now, and I couldn't be happier with it. It's an excellent tool with a lot of flexibility. You can check them out at buildpodcast.net/builder. That's buildpodcast.net/builder. And now, back to the show.
Yeah, a simple way around that. I mean, so you can Google it and find that there are ways to tie it to real cron, but if you don't have that level of access with your web host or something, just sign up with a service like Pingdom or something like that, where you should be using something like that anyway to monitor kind of the downtime. And get it to hit your site every like 5 minutes, and that will fire off cron or wp-cron.
Right. Cool. So actually that's a really good transition into the title question, how did you build it? Because I'd love to talk to you about, again, WordPress is running on all sorts of environments like you just talked about.
Yeah.
Membership plugins can get pretty complicated. So what kind of tools do you use in developing MemberPress specifically for testing?
Yeah. So that has been a hard one historically now. At least the testing part of it, but now that it's a little bit better. But I'll start with kind of the first part of your question here. So I'm kind of more of an old school kind of person, and because I was initially starting to do a lot of the development of gateways on. It was difficult to do it on a local server.
Sure.
Initially, there are tools now that will allow you to get those webhooks to come back, because you have to when you set up Stripe or PayPal or Authorize, you have to configure a URL that they're going to hit back to you. So in PayPal, a lot of people are familiar with the concept of the IPN, the instant payment notification. And so when you're developing on your local machine, that historically has been difficult. Of course, there are ways around that now where it can get to you. But yeah, so I just set up a Linode server, development server, and some environments on that, and then I would just log in, and I use Vim, VI formerly, but now Vim, for pretty much all my development.
Nice.
So I'm not like super dialed in with anything. Although I have been using Atom a little bit more lately, and I think it's got a good VI plugin that I really like. But yeah, so development server is what I used in kind of a real kind of test environment. And then that way it was easier for me to like test kind of what a real environment would be like, because it's on the web. I can set up Stripe and all the different gateways so that I can just, not fool around with being on the local environment. And so, I mean, clearly this kind of an environment isn't for everybody. I'm really comfortable in Vim, but it's got a pretty steep learning curve.
Yeah.
I know that, so there's a Paul Carter, who is now the head of support for us. He actually still uses Notepad++. He's a Windows guy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. But it actually has a kind of a cool feature where you can basically like, it uses SFTP to kind of behind the scenes sync files with the server.
Yeah.
So he kind of was able to just use that same development server. He actually helped launch MemberPress, back in 2012, 2013 time frame. But yeah, that's kind of what he has used. But I don't really do any of that. Now I kind of have moved to more of a local environment. So one of our developers uses VVV for all of his stuff. I still am kind of using Flywheel, Flywheel Local, which is actually really nice. And then for testing, we, of course, use the WCI or CLI test suite, and it's PHP unit, but they've written some scripts that really make it a lot easier.
Nice.
And so so it's been really good for us in terms of like the kind of the style, because I and a lot of my kind of colleagues, we were all Ruby developers. So of course, MemberPress and kind of all of the major plugins that I've written are in a kind of faux MVC, so model view controller kind of setup. And I think it's really served us well. WordPress actually has a really good, we've got controllers, which basically, we put all of our hooks kind of in one function in the controller, and then we load up controllers. And so those hooks get loaded on the loading of the plugin. And then we have, views, which are basically templates, that just have straight HTML and some, visual-oriented PHP. And then we have models that we use. And we've actually kind of gotten our framework down. It's kind of just an internal framework that we just continue to improve, for each of these plugins. But it's actually kind of gotten pretty refined now. So it's easy working with, we use WP Shell a lot. So WP Shell is another WP CLI thing. And I'm telling you, if you have not used that, it's phenomenal, because you can just run WordPress commands. It loads up your whole WordPress environment, and you have an interactive shell where you can just and if you want to do some quick and dirty testing, before you have your kind of automated testing in place or whatever, you just run stuff right in the shell, and it's good.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to link that in the show notes, definitely. And I'm going to check
absolutely.
that out. So I have a follow-up question to that, because you came from a Ruby environment, and it's kind of my perception. Most of my experience is with PHP and WordPress.
Right.
But I have a master's in software engineering, so I got a lot of software development theory and things like that. Do you feel like your background in Ruby has kind of helped you with the software engineering aspects of WordPress? Because I kind of feel like the WordPress development group is maturing, right? We're seeing a lot more automated testing and things like that.
Right.
But I feel like we're getting more theories that older generations of coders have had for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting, because I think part of that, though, is just WordPress actually deprecating some of the older versions of PHP. And I wish that they would deprecate some more, because, PHP's made huge strides in that space. And when I started with Pretty Links, you had to code to PHP 4, which didn't even have true object. It wasn't fully object oriented, and it was just those were the battle days, man. It was hard, and there weren't now as a developer, it's just so much better in WordPress, because you have these extra tools too, like WP CLI is a great one that we use the crap out of, and there's VVV, and there's all these things that didn't even exist back then. I mean, back then it was just like, you just had to
open up Notepad.
Google it,
yeah.
and Stack Overflow. I don't even know if there was. I guess Stack Overflow existed back then.
Yeah,
I just Googled
that, right?
stuff.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely. That's a really good point, right? The version of PHP, because for a while I remember like kind of the switch to like switching from 4 to 5 and kind of coding for both of those, and like, are you going to do things functional and like backwards compatibility and all these things that you have to consider for object-oriented, like true object-oriented programming. So pretty interesting.
Exactly.
Stuff.
Yeah. And I think that it has served me well. The kind of the old, kind of skills that I've had. I feel like the plugins are coded using, real solid kind of software engineering kind of concepts, object-oriented design, and all that kind of stuff. We're using the MVC kind of pattern. We use singletons. We use, all these things, throughout the code base that I feel like, kind of makes it a little bit easier for us. We use one of the things that we started using as soon as PHP 4 was deprecated was auto loading, which has made a lot of really good improvements, for us. And so, and there are other things that hopefully we can start utilizing, once PHP 2 is deprecated.
Yeah.
That'll be really nice. There are a lot of places in the code that I'd like to have rewritten.
Gotcha.
And so, but yeah. Some of the downsides of it, though, I would say, coming from that background, is that, I feel like there are people that are more like that have always kind of been in the WordPress environment and have always been, that's how they've kind of learned. Because WordPress historically hasn't always been like super consistent on like, how you should be doing things,
Right, yeah.
And so there's been some questions here and there, and I've kind of gone off half-cocked a few times and just like, it's like, well, this is how I know how to do it, so I'm just going to do it. And then I have, one of my buddies like Brandon Dove or somebody who, no, actually, you shouldn't be doing that, Blair. You should do some, this.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So like a good example of that would be like when custom post types first came out, and I was still like, writing custom database columns for things. I still believe that there are definitely important places for database columns, or tables, but man, you can do a lot of cool stuff with custom post types, for sure, and taxonomies. So that's kind of just been the downside, is that sometimes, I'm not, it's like I know a way to do it and I just start doing it, and then I have to reevaluate later. No, WordPress already does some of this, So.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a trap that a lot of, that's, I think, my biggest fear as a developer is one day I'll just be like, I don't feel like learning new stuff, and then I don't. Like,
I'm just going to keep coding in COBOL and just
forever.
Actually, though, with that, it's like if you did know COBOL, you'd probably be making a lot of money.
Yeah, I'd be one of like
now
5
everyone's
people
retired.
working for a bank. Like, yeah.
yeah. It's like, AS400.
Here we go.
Yes. Let's do this.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to link in the show notes to COBOL too for fun.
Yeah, do it.
Sweet. Well, so we talked a little bit about this, and so I feel like we should elaborate a little bit more. We're coming up on time, but I want to know like what your plans for the future are. You talked about maybe refactoring some things, but what's coming down the pike for MemberPress?
Well, yeah, I think this year we're doing a lot of code kind of refactoring and enhancements. We're going to be doing a few new add-ons that I think are going to be pretty useful to people. And yeah, I mean, just kind of continuing on down that road, just, honing the product. And this last year, a lot of it was about, so we did some rebranding, a lot of rebranding work. We did a lot of analytics kind of work. So we're trying to get better with our marketing and kind of like figuring out what our customers want and need, and dialing in all of our kind of business processes. And so this next year, I feel like, we're going to be dropping some cool add-ons. We're going to be, but generally like a lot of it's going to be about product improvement. Like not that it's, I of course, think it's fantastic, but it's also, it's software, right? So there's always, things that you want to clean up and make sure, are working properly, and performance enhancements and all of that. And so we're going to be doing a lot of that this year as well. So
Nice. That's awesome. And I want to follow up on something you said about getting better with marketing. At the time of this recording, PostStat published an article from Scott Bollinger, kind of like about the WordPress theme and plugin ecosystem and how you used to be able to build something and then eventually people would buy it, like if it was good. And that's getting harder now. Have you noticed that?
Oh yeah, there's been a really dramatic, I think, over the last 5 years change in kind of the WordPress community. I mean, it's like, you can kind of see it coming out of, being a hobby for people into like, this is my livelihood, or this is my lifeblood kind of thing. And a lot of that, it's hard for me to, this is one kind of question that I've had a lot, because, we've experienced growth every year, not like rocket ship growth, but good, steady, and you have to wonder, like, how much of that is tied to WordPress's growth, right? Because WordPress has just exploded in you see it everywhere now, and it's it powers so much of the web now that it's got a lot of attention, right? And so it's a bigger market. It's not quite as much of a everybody knows everybody kind of feel anymore. Right. And so you have to do marketing. I mean, now, right? You have to go out there and, figure out, SEO and Google ads and yada, yada, right? The whole thing. So, and you've got to, and I've noticed too that like the branding has gotten, really professional across the board, I think with these sites. And then you've got like, entities like Woo and iThemes and stuff that are just like getting bigger and bigger and more big business, man,
right,
than it has been in the past, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really that's some really great insight, and I like that a lot. And so I feel like we've already gotten a trade secret, but I'm going to end on my favorite question, which is, do you have any trade secrets for us?
Twizzlers and Red Bull.
Twizzlers and Red Bull.
I think that one of the things that I think is a trade secret, at least for the developer founder, is that first of all, if you are going to develop a product, if you want to go from like services into product, you pretty much have to control your own schedule and your kind of work environment. And then the other thing I think is another one is, don't be afraid to, work outside of kind of general work hours. I know it's hard, balancing family and work and all that kind of stuff, but I think it can be done. And so I think it's not like a super huge, it seems kind of, common sense, but that's how you do it, right? Yeah. It's all about the hustle, right?
Yeah, it's all about the hustle. Absolutely. I like that. I have a wife and daughter now, and I try to be really cognizant of spending time with them. But on the same token, there are some days, like just work days, where I'll knock off and play with them, and with the understanding that I'm going to have to make that time up maybe over a weekend or at night sometimes. So
yeah.
Finding balance, especially when you work for yourself, especially for products, because it's your own schedule, is really tough. So I think that's really great advice, especially for people who are just now like wading into the product space. So
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, it can be tricky, but yes, it can be done.
Yes, and then when you do it, I'm sure it feels like a lot of fun to most people.
Oh yeah, it's great. I mean, I love what I'm doing right now. It's like play. Almost.
Right.
Don't tell my wife that though. Okay.
Mum's the word.
I'm slaving away right now. Right.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, that's all I have. Blair, thanks so much for your time for coming on the show. What a great conversation. Thanks again to Blair for taking the time out of his day to talk to us. And thanks again to our sponsors. Make sure to check out Liquid Web for managed WordPress hosting. I use them on all of my important sites. They are that good. And they recently rolled out managed WooCommerce hosting too. They are at buildpodcast.net/liquid. If you want to save your clients or yourself money through recovering abandoned carts, check out Jilt. They're over at buildpodcast.net/Jilt. And finally, if you want to build incredible websites at a fraction of the time and the cost, check out Beaver Builder. I use it and I love it. They're over at buildpodcast.net/builder. For all of the show notes, head over to howibuilt.it/66. If you like the show, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and a review.
It really helps people discover the show. Finally, so if you like the show and you want to support it directly, head over to patreon.com